Imagine you are standing ankle-deep in mud that smells like iron and rot. Snow is falling sideways, melting as it hits the heat of fresh blood. Somewhere in the dark, a man is screaming, not a heroic scream, not a battle cry, but the sound a human makes when the world ends and there is nothing left to bargain with. You've heard the stories. You know who always wins this kind of moment. So here is the impossible question. What happens when the men who erased entire empires ride straight into a people who refuse to break? You think you know the Mongols, the storm from the east, the horsemen who turned cities into skull fields and rivers red enough to stain memory itself. You think you know the Vikings too, longships, axes, roaring gods. But history never tells you what happens when nightmares collide. And before you assume you know the ending, wait. Because what happened next shocked even the killers who thought they had seen everything. In the next hour, you will witness 5 moments that should not exist in the same story. You will see a Mongol general stare at a battlefield so wrong, so silent, that he orders his men to stop killing, out of fear. You will follow a boy raised among wolves and corpses, who learns pain as a language before he learns mercy, and becomes the sharpest weapon the steppe ever forged. You will watch an outnumbered force choose a plan so insane that seasoned warriors laugh, until the laughing stops. You will reach a moment where it all seems over, where hope is crushed so completely that men begin to pray to gods they don't even believe in anymore. And then, at the very edge of annihilation, you will see a forgotten trick, buried in ice and memory, flip the entire war on its head. Stay with me. Because the story you're about to hear was buried on purpose. Act 1 begins long before the first sword is drawn. It begins with despair. You are born into a world that is already dying. In the early 13th century, the Mongols are not just winning wars, they are unmaking civilizations. Cities that resist are erased so thoroughly that later travelers will ride for days over empty ground, never knowing a metropolis once stood there. The air after a Mongol conquest does not smell like victory. It smells like burned fat, wet ash, and sickness. The steppe has produced conquerors before, but this is different. These men do not fight like anyone else. They don't charge blindly. They don't duel for honor. They encircle, starve, terrorize, and lie. They retreat on purpose. They let you think you've won. Then they come back at night, screaming in languages you don't understand, killing your horses first so you can't run. By the time their banners reach the edges of Eastern Europe, fear arrives weeks before the army does. Refugees stagger into towns with empty eyes. They tell stories of children used as shields, of entire populations marched ahead of the army to soak up arrows. Some stories are exaggerated. Many are not. You are a warrior living on the cold fringe of this world. Your people are traders, raiders, mercenaries. Your grandfathers once crossed seas in dragon-headed ships. They burned monasteries and laughed at kings. But that was generations ago. Now your rivers freeze solid in winter. Your towns are wooden. Your numbers are thin. And the stories coming from the east do not sound like stories of men. They sound like stories of extinction. You hear the name whispered first, then spoken aloud. Mongols. You've fought steppe raiders before. Pechenegs. Cumans. You know their tricks. But these ones? They don't break formation. They don't panic. And they don't stop. Every calculation says the same thing. If they come here, you die. And this is the moment history usually skips over, the waiting. The weeks where no one sleeps properly. Where every sound at night feels like hooves. Where even the strongest men start snapping at each other, because fear needs somewhere to go. Some suggest surrender, tribute, anything. Others spit and say they'd rather die with an axe in their hands than live on their knees. And then there is the leader. He is not a king in the golden crown sense. He does not rule by divine right. He is followed because he has survived things no one else has. His body is a map of scars. His face is wrong, one eye slightly lower than the other, nose broken so many times it never healed straight. When he breathes, it whistles. As a child, he watched his village burn. He remembers the smell of pine wood soaked in blood. He remembers hiding under a body that was still warm. He learned early that the world does not reward mercy. His name doesn't matter yet. What matters is this: he knows what is coming. And he knows they cannot win by fighting the Mongols the way everyone else did. But across the frozen plains, another man is also preparing. Act 2 belongs to him. Imagine growing up with the sound of horses before you can walk. Imagine learning to shoot before you learn to read faces. This man was born into violence so complete it feels like a law of nature. His father was poisoned by rivals. His family was abandoned by their own tribe. He survived by eating rodents, roots, whatever didn't kill him first. Pain shaped him. Hunger educated him. Betrayal hardened him. By the time he is grown, he has learned one sacred rule: the world is a battlefield, and hesitation is death. He does not believe in glory. He believes in results. When he rides west, it is not out of hatred. It is logistics, resources, control. The steppe demands expansion or collapse. And he has no intention of collapsing. He has seen cities beg. He has seen kings kneel. He has watched walls crumble under engines dragged halfway across the earth. Nothing surprises him anymore. Until reports start coming in. Scouts speak of warriors who fight on frozen ground like it's solid stone. Men who don't scatter when faced with feigned retreats. Men who aim not for riders, but for horses' legs, hamstrings snapping, bodies tumbling into chaos. At first, he dismisses it. Every frontier has its brutes. Then a messenger arrives missing 3 fingers and most of his face. He collapses before he can finish speaking. The message is simple. These men do not run. That sentence lingers. Because everything the Mongols are built on assumes one truth: everyone runs eventually. He orders a probing attack. Not a full invasion. Just enough to test. Enough to break resistance and spread fear. It should be easy. And this is where the plan begins to form on the other side. Quietly, desperately, in rooms that smell of smoke and sweat and old iron. The leader gathers his captains. He does not promise victory. He promises pain. He tells them the truth no one wants to hear. We cannot beat them in the open. We cannot outshoot them. We cannot outnumber them. If we fight like men, we die like animals. Silence. Then he says the thing that sounds like madness. So we don't fight like men. He speaks of ice, of forests, of darkness, of making the battlefield so wrong that Mongol instincts betray them. He speaks of using fear, not as a weapon against peasants, but against warriors who have never felt it aimed back at them. Some captains laugh nervously. Others stare at the floor. One man stands up and calls it suicide. The leader doesn't argue. He just lifts his tunic and shows them his scars. Burns. Cuts. Bite marks. I've already died, he says. This is just what came after. This is the moment where history should end. Where sensible men walk away. Where annihilation becomes inevitable. Instead, they choose to try. And just before the first clash, just before blood touches snow, something happens that will change the course of everything. But to understand that moment, to understand why hardened Mongol veterans would later swear they heard ghosts screaming in the trees, you need to know what these people remembered, and what the Mongols had forgotten. That comes next. The first clash does not happen the way anyone expects. It begins with silence. Not the calm silence of peace, but the heavy, pressing quiet that makes your ears ring. The kind that makes men swallow again and again, because their mouths have gone dry. The Mongol advance unit rides forward at dawn. Light cavalry. Fast. Confident. They expect the usual response: scattered resistance, maybe a panic charge, then a retreat. They are already thinking 3 moves ahead, already planning how to lure the enemy out, how to fold them inward like wet cloth. But the field in front of them is empty. No banners. No war cries. No shield wall. Just trees. Dark, crooked trunks leaning over frozen ground. Snow crusted hard enough to crack under hooves. The Mongols slow. Not because they're afraid, but because this is wrong. There should be scouts. There should be noise. Fear has a sound. Panic leaks. This place feels sealed. A young Mongol rider named Borkai, barely 20, sharp-eyed, proud, feels something he doesn't recognize tighten in his chest. He scans the tree line. Nothing moves. No birds. No wind. He spits to break the feeling. Then the ice breaks. Not metaphorically. Literally. A horse screams as its front legs vanish into white. The sound is wet and awful, bone punching through flesh. Another horse stumbles. Then another. Suddenly the frozen ground is a trap, cracking open in jagged lines. Horses fall. Riders slam forward, smashing teeth, ribs, skulls. And from the trees, the world explodes. Javelins come first. Heavy. Short range. Thrown low and hard. They punch into horses' chests, throats, bellies. Not riders. Horses. Always the horses. Then axes. Men burst from the forest wearing layered wool, leather, bone. Faces smeared dark to break their shape. They don't shout. They don't roar. They run forward silently, slipping on ice they know how to walk on, hacking at legs, tendons, stirrup straps. Borkai draws his bow, but his horse goes down beneath him, shrieking. He rolls, gasping, snow filling his mouth. He gets to his knees just in time to see a man with a beard crusted white with frost bring an axe down on his arm. The sound is like splitting firewood. Borkai does not die immediately. He watches the sky while the pain eats him alive. He smells blood, his own, and something else. Pine sap. Old smoke. And he understands, too late, that this is not a skirmish. This is a message. The Mongols pull back hard. They always do. Discipline snaps them out of shock. They fire as they retreat, arrows hissing, but the forest swallows their enemies again. No pursuit. No overextension. The field is left littered with dead horses, broken men, blood soaking into snow that will not melt. When the survivors ride back to camp, they are quieter than Mongols are supposed to be. The general listens without interrupting. He notices details others miss, the emphasis on silence, the way every story circles back to the ground itself turning hostile. Traps, one officer says. Peasant tricks. The general nods slowly, but his eyes stay distant. Because traps don't usually come with discipline like that. Traps don't usually leave no prisoners. He orders a larger force forward. This time, heavy cavalry. Archers layered deep. Engineers behind them. If these northerners want to hide in trees, fine. He'll burn the trees. Act 3 has already begun, even if no one calls it that yet. On the other side, the leader walks among his men at night. Fires are small. Smoke is kept low. No singing. No speeches. He stops beside a young warrior whose hands are shaking as he sharpens his blade. "You're afraid," the leader says quietly. The boy nods. "Doesn't lie." "Good," the leader says. "Fear keeps you alive. Courage gets you killed." He moves on. 3 human stories unfold here, braided into the larger nightmare. The first is the boy, barely 17, who has never killed a man before today. He dreams of the horse screaming. He wakes with blood in his mouth from biting his own tongue. The second is an older fighter named Ivor, once a raider, now a father. He fights because if he doesn't, his children will grow up as slaves, if they grow up at all. He sharpens his axe methodically, every stroke a promise. The third is the leader himself. Alone in the dark, he unwraps an old piece of cloth. Inside is a small, crude carving of a ship. He runs his thumb over it once, then puts it away. Some parts of the past hurt too much to touch. Morning comes grey and bitter. This time, the Mongols advance carefully. Scouts spread wide. Engineers test the ground ahead with poles. Fires are prepared. They don't rush. And for a moment, just a moment, it seems like the Northerners' plan has failed. Arrows rain into the forest. Trees burn. Smoke chokes the air. Men cough. Eyes sting. Positions are abandoned. Mongol cavalry surges forward, hooves thundering, horn sounding. The leader watches from a ridge, jaw tight. This is the point of no return. He raises his hand. And the horns answer, not Mongol horns, but deep, hollow blasts that echo unnaturally through the trees. Not loud. Wrong. Like something calling from underground. The ground does not break this time. The ice holds. The Mongols charge in, momentum building, and then the nets drop. Weighted ropes fall from branches, tangling horses mid-stride. Men slam into each other. Axes swing from above. Spears thrust down through gaps in armor. The forest becomes a killing maze. The Mongols fight back savagely. They always do. Blades flash. Arrows fired at point-blank range punch through faces, throats. Men scream. Snow turns to red slush. For a while, it's chaos. Balanced. Uncertain. Then the Mongol heavy cavalry breaks through the far side. And the leader's heart sinks. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. This is the first false ending, the moment where it looks like the defenders have done enough. Where lesser storytellers would end it with heroic resistance. But reality is crueler. The Mongols adapt faster than anyone alive. They always have. The general orders a full encirclement. Fires spread wider. The forest burns. Smoke rolls thick enough to choke lungs. Horses trample the wounded. The northerners are forced out into the open. And now the Mongols can do what they do best. Arrows fall like rain. Not wild. Calculated. Measured. Every shot aimed to wound, to cripple, to break formation. Men drop screaming, clutching legs, bellies, necks. Ivor goes down with an arrow through his thigh. He tries to stand. Falls. Crawls. Another arrow takes his shoulder. He screams for his sons, not knowing if they're alive or dead. The boy freezes. Literally freezes. His legs won't move. He watches a Mongol rider bear down on him, saber raised, face calm. At the last second, someone slams into the rider from the side, dragging him down. The leader. Breathing hard. Bloody. Move, he roars. They retreat. Disorderly. Bleeding. Broken. By nightfall, the field belongs to the Mongols. Bodies are stacked. Prisoners are taken. Few, but enough. Horses feast on frozen flesh. Fires burn high. The general walks the battlefield, boots crunching on ice and bone. He should feel satisfied. He does not. Too many of his men are dead. Too many wounded. And the enemy, those who survived, did not shatter. They did not flee in panic. They withdrew like soldiers. He orders interrogations. A captured warrior, teeth smashed out, laughs when asked about surrender. "We've lost before," he rasps. "We remember how." That sentence bothers the general more than any threat. Because memory is dangerous. This is the lowest point for the defenders. Their dead are unburied. Their wounded groan in the dark. Supplies are low. Fires are forbidden. Morale bleeds out with every breath. Some men whisper that the gods have abandoned them. Others argue about retreat, north, into deeper cold, away from this doom. The leader listens. Says nothing. Then, in the dead of night, he calls for 3 men. The boy. A scout with one eye. And an old woman. Yes. An old woman. She is wrapped in furs older than most of the men. Her hair is white. Her hands shake, but her eyes are sharp. Sharp enough to cut. She speaks slowly. Her voice cracks like ice on a river. "You fight like land men," she says. "They fight like wind. But you forgot something." The leader leans in. "What?" he asks. She smiles. No warmth in it. "You forgot the sea." Silence. There is no sea here. Only frozen rivers. Marshes. Ice. The old woman taps the ground with her staff. "Not tonight," she says. "But soon." This is the miracle twist beginning to breathe. But it will demand a price so high that some men will refuse to pay it. And the Mongols, confident, dominant, are about to make the one mistake that has ended every unstoppable force in history. They will underestimate how far a desperate people are willing to go. That comes next. The Mongols believe the worst is over. That belief has killed more conquerors than swords ever have. The general allows his men to rest. Not long, he never allows comfort, but long enough for confidence to creep back in. Fires burn openly now. Horses are fed well. Armor is repaired. The wounded groan, but Mongols are used to groans. Pain is the background noise of empire. Scouts report movement north. Retreat. Broken resistance. Exactly as expected. The general plans the next phase: deeper penetration, faster strikes, no more playing with forests. He intends to finish this cold land the same way he has finished every other: decapitate leadership, terrorize survivors, move on. And this is where history takes a breath and lies to you. Because what actually happens next never made it into most chronicles. The river freezes completely 3 nights later. Not the thin, cracking ice of early winter, but the hard, blue-black kind that sings under your feet and holds weight like stone. The kind old people pray for and young people fear. The old woman stands at the edge before dawn. Frost clings to her lashes. She presses her palm to the ice, listens, then nods. "Tonight," she says. The plan is madness. It requires timing so precise that being early means death, and being late means annihilation. It requires men to walk into darkness with no fires, no horns, no cries, only memory to guide them. It requires trust in something older than tactics. Some refuse. A few walk away. No one stops them. Those who remain smear ash into their hair, onto their faces. They wrap cloth around metal so nothing clinks. They cut away anything that shines. The boy is among them. He is shaking, not from cold, but from knowing that if this fails, there will be no second chance. He ties his father's old knife to his wrist so he cannot drop it. The leader walks the line one last time. No speech. Just eye contact. When he reaches Ivo's sons, both alive, barely, he pauses. Places a hand on each of their shoulders. "For your father," he says. They nod. Teeth clenched. Tears frozen on cheeks. They move at moonrise. Across the river. Across ice that could become a grave. On the Mongol side, the camp is loud by comparison. Men laugh quietly. Someone sings an old steppe song about home. Horses stamp and snort. Guards walk their circuits, but they are guarding land approaches, tree lines, ridges. No one expects an attack across a frozen river in pitch darkness. No one expects what comes next. The first Mongol dies without knowing he is under attack. His throat opens silently under a blade. He slumps, steam pouring from his neck, blood freezing before it hits the ground. Then another. Then another. Tents are cut open from behind. Men wake to knives already inside them. Some try to scream. They gurgle instead. The boy kills his first man here. A Mongol officer half awake, reaching for a sword. The knife goes into his eye. The boy feels resistance, soft, then hard, then warmth. He vomits after. Keeps moving. The river does not betray them. The ice holds. For 10 minutes, the Mongol camp is being murdered by ghosts. Until a horse screams. That scream rips the night open. Chaos detonates. Mongols leap from tents grabbing weapons. Fires are kicked over. Arrows are fired blindly into darkness. Men collide. Horses rear, break free, trample. The leader raises his arm, and the horns sound again. Not from the forest this time. From everywhere. Deep. Layered. Echoing off ice and fog. It sounds like an army 10 times the size it really is. The Mongols rally fast, they always do, but something is wrong. Attacks are coming from angles that make no sense. From behind. From the river. From inside their own lines. The general emerges from his command tent fully armored, blade in hand. He takes in the scene in seconds. This is no raid. This is a slaughter designed to look like madness. He orders formations. He orders fire arrows. He orders countercharges. And for a moment, Just a moment, it looks like the Mongols might still win. Then the ice cracks again. Not under the attackers. Under the reinforcements. Heavy cavalry mounts surge forward to stabilize the camp, and the frozen river, weakened by earlier crossings and fire, collapses in sections. Horses plunge screaming into black water. Armor drags men under. Ice slabs flip, crushing bodies. The screams here are different. Higher. Panicked. The sound of drowning in armor. The general stares. He has seen floods. He has seen avalanches. He has never seen an enemy turn winter itself into a weapon like this. This is the second false ending. Because even now, even with the camp in chaos, the Mongols are killing back. Hard. Efficient. The attackers are taking losses they cannot replace. Men fall. Blood slicks the ice. Some northerners slip and are cut down before they can rise. The leader takes a slash across the ribs. Keeps fighting. Another across the arm. His grip weakens. The boy sees him stagger. Runs toward him. And is thrown backward by a horse. He hits the ice. Wind knocked out. He looks up to see the general advancing, cutting a path, eyes locked on the leader. This is it. This is where legends usually die. The leader braces. And then, the old woman steps onto the ice. No one notices at first. She moves slowly, deliberately, staff tapping. She begins to chant. Not loud. Not fast. Old words. River words. Words that predate both armies. Men glance at her in confusion. Some laugh. One Mongol archer draws, hesitates. Then the fog rolls in. Not a gentle mist. A wall. Thick, white, blinding. It swallows fires. Smothers sound. Turns distance into nothing. Shouts turn into echoes. Formations dissolve. Men lose sight of each other at arm's length. The northerners melt into it like spirits. The Mongols, masters of open ground, are suddenly blind. Axes strike from nowhere. Spears punch out of white. Shadows appear. Kill. Vanish. Horses bolt. Men swing at phantoms. The general shouts orders that no one can hear. This is the miracle twist made flesh. The boy finds himself face to face with a Mongol veteran, scarred, calm even now. They clash. Blade on blade. The Mongol is stronger. Faster. The boy slips. The Mongol raises his saber. And Ivo's son, one of them, buries an axe in the Mongol's spine. They lock eyes. Nod once. Move on. Somewhere in the fog, the leader finds the general. They recognize each other instantly. Predators always do. They fight without words. Blade against blade. Breath ragged. Muscles screaming. The general is technically superior. Trained. Precise. The leader is furious. A slash. A parry. Sparks. Ice cracking underfoot. The general cuts deep into the leader's thigh. Blood sprays. The leader stumbles, nearly falls into open water. The general raises his blade for the killing stroke. And the ice gives way beneath him. Not completely. Just enough. His foot plunges into freezing water. His balance breaks. The leader slams into him, driving them both down. They struggle on the ice, water-soaking armor, hands numb instantly. The general tries to rise. The leader grips his throat, pushes his face under. The general fights. Hard. Then weaker. Then still. The leader pulls free as the body sinks, dragged down by its own weight. When the fog begins to lift, it reveals a nightmare. Hundreds dead. Fires smoldering. Horses gone or drowned. Command shattered. The Mongols retreat. Not strategically. Not cleanly. They withdraw because they have to. This is the cathartic slaughter complete, but the price is horrifying. The northerners stand among their dead, shaking, sobbing, laughing hysterically. Victory tastes like blood and frostbite. The old woman collapses, spent. She dies before sunrise. The leader kneels beside her, head bowed. By morning, the Mongols are gone. Not destroyed, but broken enough. And here is what history hid from you. The Mongols did not lose because they were weaker. They lost because they encountered a people who remembered something ancient. That land, weather, and fear are weapons too. The empire would continue. The Mongols would conquer more cities, burn more worlds. But never like before. Because after this, in campfires far away, Mongol veterans would whisper about the frozen river where the night screamed back. And you now know the real story. The 199% of people will never hear. Dawn does not bring relief. It brings clarity. When the light finally creeps over the frozen river, it reveals what the dark had hidden, and what the fog had softened. Bodies locked in unnatural positions. Men frozen mid-crawl. Horses half submerged in ice, eyes wide, mouths open as if still screaming. The survivors stand silently at first. No cheering. No victory cries. Just breathing. Heavy. Shaking. Alive. The boy sits on the ice staring at his hands. They are stained dark, almost black. He scrubs them with snow until the skin splits. The blood underneath mixes with what's already there. He stops caring which is which. Ivor's sons find their father's body near the burned tree line. He has bled out slowly. His eyes are open. They close them. One of the boys whispers something into his ear, words meant for the dead, not the living. The leader limps through the wreckage. Every step sends fire up his leg. He ignores it. Pain is familiar. What he feels now is heavier. Because he knows this is not the end. Mongols do not forgive humiliation. They adapt. Scouts return by noon with news that turns stomachs cold. The Mongol army has regrouped 20 miles east. New commanders have taken charge. And more banners are arriving. The retreat was not surrender. It was recalculation. This is the third false ending, the one that would kill most stories if they dared to tell the truth. The victory that changes nothing, except expectations. The men argue. Loudly. Desperately. We can't do that again. We barely survived. They'll come back smarter. Someone says the unthinkable. Maybe we should leave. Abandon homes. Abandon land. Disappear north into deeper cold. The leader listens until the noise burns itself out. Then he speaks. They will follow, he says. Wherever we go. And next time, they won't make the same mistakes. Silence again. He looks at them, at the boy, at Ivor's sons, at men with frostbitten fingers and hollow eyes. We have one advantage left, he says. They still believe we were lucky. That word, lucky, hangs in the air like an insult. We show them it wasn't luck, he continues. We show them it was intention. The plan that follows is even worse than the last. It demands sacrifice on a scale that makes some men turn away in disgust. It demands bait. Real bait. Living bait. It demands someone to stay behind. The boy steps forward before his fear can stop him. I'll do it, he says. The leader studies him. Really studies him. You won't come back, he says. The boy nods. I know. Ivor's sons protest. The leader silences them with a look. He grips the boy's shoulder. You've already changed the world once, he says quietly. No one will forget you. The boy swallows. I don't need to be remembered. Night falls again. The northerners move fast. They leave signs this time. Deliberate. Obvious. Broken sleds. Dropped gear. Blood trails, not accidental, but placed. The Mongols take the bait. They pursue hard. Aggressively. Furious now. Pride wounded. This is no longer just conquest. It is personal. The new Mongol commander is different from the general who drowned. Younger. More rigid. He believes discipline solves everything. He believes fear must be reasserted. He orders a forced march through narrowing terrain, marshland masked by snow, rivers braided beneath ice. His officers hesitate. He overrules them. The The boy waits where he was told. Alone. Hidden beneath a collapsed fishing hut. The cold seeps into his bones. He bites down on leather to keep his teeth from chattering. He hears them before he sees them. Hooves. Hundreds. Thousands. When the lead riders appear, he stands. He does not run. An arrow takes him in the chest almost immediately. He stumbles. Another hits his leg. He falls, but not before lighting the pitch-soaked bundle at his feet. Fire blooms. Smoke coils upward. And beneath the Mongol charge, the ground collapses. Not all at once. Enough. Horses plunge. Men scream. Ice shatters. The marsh reveals itself, a sucking, freezing grave. The Mongols fight their way out. Many do. But the formation is ruined. Momentum shattered. And then the horns sound again. From the flanks. From the rear. From places that should not be reachable. The Northerners do not charge. They close. Slowly. Methodically. Axes rise and fall. Spears thrust into men trapped waist-deep in freezing mud. Arrows are wasted. Horses cannot maneuver. The commander orders retreat. There is nowhere to go. The slaughter is not glorious. It is not fast. It is work. Men beg. Men curse. Men pray to gods that are very far away. The leader finds the boy's body after. He kneels. Pulls the arrow free. Closes the boy's eyes. I told you, he whispers. You changed everything. The Mongol army does not recover from this blow. They withdraw fully from the region within weeks. Not because they are incapable of returning, but because the cost has become unpredictable. The land itself seems hostile. The people impossible to read. An empire hates uncertainty. Years later, merchants will tell stories of a frozen river where an army vanished. Mongol veterans will avoid the northern routes when possible. Commanders will warn recruits about fighting men who use winter like a blade. The leader does not live to see old age. None of them do. Violence always collects its debts. But the land remains unconquered. And that is the part history rarely explains. Empires fall not just because they are defeated, but because somewhere, someone proves they can be hurt. You were told the Mongols destroyed everything in their path. Now you know the truth. They met something they could not dominate. And it scared them enough to walk away. The world does not end with fire. It ends with silence. Years pass. Slowly. Uneasily. Like a man testing a wound to see if it will open again. The land heals first. Snow melts. Grass grows where blood soaked deep. Rivers forget the screams they once carried. Ice breaks and reforms with no memory of what it swallowed. People do not forget so easily. Children grow up hearing fragments. Half stories. Whispers spoken at night when the wind sounds wrong. They hear about a river that killed an army. About shadows that walked on ice. About men who did not run when the world told them to. The truth is never told cleanly. It never is. Because the truth is too sharp. The leader grows older, slower. His limp never leaves him. Some days he can barely stand. On others, he walks to the river alone and watches the ice form, then break, then form again. He does not smile. He knows something most conquerors never learn. Victory is not a moment. It is a condition. And conditions change. Messengers arrive from the south and east over the years. News of Mongol victories elsewhere. Cities erased. Kingdoms folded like cloth. Names that make even hardened men go quiet. The empire did not die here. It simply chose not to return. And that distinction matters. Because it means this was not destiny. Not fate. Not divine intervention. It was choice. A calculation that somewhere north of reason, conquest stopped being profitable. The leader understands this better than anyone. One winter, when his hands are too stiff to hold a blade, he gathers the young warriors, boys and girls born after the war. They expect speeches. They expect pride. He gives them none. Do not believe the stories, he says. We were not stronger. We were not braver. We were more desperate. They shift uncomfortably. They will tell you we won because we were clever. Because our ancestors were fierce. Because the gods favored us. He shakes his head slowly. None of that will save you next time. Someone asks the question that has waited years to be asked. Will there be a next time? The leader looks toward the dark line of trees. Toward the river beyond. There is always a next time, he says. The world does not stop making monsters. He dies not long after. Quietly. In sleep. His body is burned according to old custom. His ashes scattered on ice that will carry them away. No monument is raised. The boy is remembered differently. His name becomes a placeholder. A symbol. Mothers use it to scare children into obedience. Fathers use it to teach courage. Over time, the real boy disappears behind the idea of him. That is how myths work. The Mongols remember too. Not officially. Not in chronicles meant for courts and khans. But in campfire stories. In warnings passed from veteran to recruit. In routes avoided when alternatives exist. There are places the empire touches lightly. This is one of them. And here is the part history hid from you, the part that does not fit neat narratives. The Mongols were not stopped by superior warriors. They were not stopped by technology. They were not stopped by walls or numbers or gods. They were stopped by people who understood that survival is not about winning battles. It is about making the cost unbearable. That lesson echoes forward through time. You see it when empires stall in mountains they cannot map. In jungles that rot supply lines. In winters that kill more soldiers than enemies ever could. You see it every time a smaller force refuses to play by the rules written for its own defeat. And that is why this story matters. Not because Vikings beat Mongols. Not because ice defeated steel. But because for one brutal, frozen stretch of history, the most terrifying war machine the world had ever seen looked at a place, and decided it was not worth the price. That decision rippled outward. It slowed campaigns. Changed routes. Bought time for others who would later resist in their own ways. History loves unstoppable forces. But history is shaped by the moments when unstoppable forces hesitate. You have been told the Mongols destroyed entire empires. Now you know the rest. You know about the night the river screamed back. You know about the boy who chose to stay behind. You know about the leader who understood that fear could be turned around. You know about the victory that was not a victory, but a warning. And that knowledge gives you something rare. Perspective. Because once you see how empires really falter, you start to recognize the pattern everywhere. Not in textbooks. Not in monuments. But in the quiet places history steps around. You now know the real story. The one buried under ice, blood, and silence. The one 99% of people will never hear. And once you've heard it, you can never look at power the same way again. There is one last thing history never tells you. Not because it was forgotten, but because it is uncomfortable. Empires like to explain themselves as inevitable, as progress, as destiny wearing armor. But inevitability shatters the moment someone survives. Long after the leader's ashes scatter into the river, long after the boy's name blurs into legend, something subtle happens across the Mongol world. Orders change. Campaign maps gain empty spaces, regions marked not as enemies, not as allies, but as unnecessary. Routes bend. Supply lines reroute. Scouts are told not to push too far north unless commanded directly. No proclamation is made. No defeat acknowledged. But fear does not need official language. It only needs memory. A Mongol veteran, years later, now missing fingers, now slower, tells a new recruit about a winter where arrows didn't matter. About ice that opened under hooves. About enemies who didn't shout, didn't chase glory, didn't even seem alive. The recruit laughs. The veteran does not. And that silence, that pause, is where empires begin to age. Because power is not just about what you can destroy. It is about what you refuse to face again. The people of the north never build a kingdom that conquers others. They never march south in revenge. They never carve their names into marble or gold. They simply remain. And sometimes, remaining is the most radical act there is. Generations later, travelers pass through the region. They note how cautious the locals are, how they watch rivers before crossing, how they listen to wind like it might speak back. Some ask about the Mongols. The elders shrug. They came, they say. Then they left. No heroics. No boasting. Just fact. Because the ones who lived through it understand something stories often miss. Survival is not a victory parade. It is a scar you learn to carry without letting it own you. And here, this is where the story finally turns toward you. Because this was never just about Mongols and Vikings. Or steppe and ice. Or swords and blood. It was about systems that believe they are untouchable. About forces that assume fear only flows one direction. About what happens when that assumption breaks. Every age has its Mongols. Every age has its frozen rivers. And every age waits, quietly, for the moment when someone realizes that playing by the enemy's rules is just another way to lose. You have just walked through a story most people never hear told this way. Not clean. Not comforting. Not heroic in the way movies like. But real. You smelled the blood. You felt the ice crack. You watched men who should have won decide it wasn't worth the cost. That knowledge changes how you see history. It changes how you see power. Because now you understand something dangerous. Unstoppable forces don't stop when they are defeated. They stop when they are unnerved. When the ground fights back. When the night refuses to behave. When victory stops being predictable. And once that happens, even empires hesitate. You are now carrying a story that was meant to stay buried. A story about fear turning around. About memory becoming a weapon. About the night the world's greatest conquerors learned that some places are not meant to be owned. You now know the real story. And once you know it, you never look at Invincible the same way again.